If you're interested in attending Catholic worship, come consider the 10 o'clock a.m. Mass at St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. We're located just 4 blocks up from Soldiers Field Road at 43 Holton Street. You can check out our website at stanthonyalston.org. That's stanthonyalston.org. And come to the 10 o'clock Mass and experience our chanted Liturgy of the Eucharist every Sunday. Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day as we continue through the 10th week of Ordinary Time, and as we continue through the Sermon of the Mount. Let us be filled with your Spirit to come to grow closer to Christ, and we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is Matthew 5:17 through 19. And this is where Jesus talks about that he has not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. So we understand that. And he's not come to take away one stroke of the law until it's all accomplished. Well, let's look at what that means, because of course there's one part that says, well, Jesus has come, we no longer have to follow the law. Well, he is the fulfillment of the law, but then we have to say, but there are certain laws we still have to follow. So how does that play if he is the fulfillment of the law? And I always, in all my examples, go back to the physics department at Harvard University. And as you all know, Harvard University surrounds me. If Jesus came and said that he is not going to change any of the laws of physics, what would you say? And in a sense, he overcame some of the laws of physics. We know he walked on water. We know the laws of biology. We know he healed people. But all of us still have to follow the laws of physics and everything else. So, in other words, what he's saying is that there are certain laws that are the way God set up the world, and those will not change. And obviously not necessarily, although I suppose we could include that, the laws of physics, but the laws of how we live. And remember, what is the prime law? This sums up the law and the prophets. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Let us also remember the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. If we were to follow those 3 laws, we would live in a world of total peace. So we need to understand that's what he's coming to say in this. He's not changing anything. And so we go back to what we saw on Monday, that total humility to the Lord, and we continue through that and see that's the principle that will continue. That total humility, that total call to live in the humility of the Lord is what will lead us to the most amount of peace. And of course, that takes a lot of prayer. Now, you may know that I am always very critical of people who focus on living a well-behaved way of life, so to speak. Maybe that isn't the greatest term, but you know, I have really zero tolerance for people who will say that we have to, grow. Strictly say, there are people who say this, and it's wonderful. As a matter of fact, we're going to be talking soon with someone who, on the other show, with someone who just finished writing a book about virtue. But what we want to talk about is someone who says we're only called to grow in virtue and everything else. Well, I've come to learn that we live a partnership with God, and that's what prayer is so important. So we live in that partnership. In other words, the Lord is guiding us through our life to grow in virtue and to grow in our relationship with him so that we may do the things he calls us to do. So ultimately, we're still called to be people who love God and love neighbor, do unto others as we would have others do unto us. But all of that is in the context of how we grow in our ability to do that. And this is an essential part of what we believe in. And when we don't follow that path, when we walk down a path where we don't understand those dynamics, then we can walk down a path where stupid things make sense to us. And that's where there's a problem. I'll give a good example. If someone, we see in the news people are worried about people who are committing violence and who are robbing others and everything else, and we see that in the news. Well, obviously, if they lived the faith the way the Lord called them to do, that would not happen, because if you, in your reasoning, say it makes sense for me to go out and rob a bank, that's a stupid way of thinking. But we know there are people who think stupidly. But if they were to turn around and see all of what they are looking for by robbing a bank and turn to the Lord and say, Lord, help me to get what I need in order that I may do what your will is, they would grow in their way of thinking and turn away from their stupid way of thinking. How's that? We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight, part of the Voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts. We'll be right back. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. So we're back, and we're looking at this part of the Sermon of the Mount where Jesus is not eliminating any of the parts of the law until they are fulfilled. So what the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches is what Jesus is instilling is he is creating an eternal law of charity. So he's teaching that the law, which is understood from the Old Testament, is the rules of God, can be summed up in what we were talking about, which comes out to be an eternal law of charity. And that's how we're supposed to live. And that's the relationship with the new covenant. And that's the fulfillment of the law makes it the new way of living, which is an eternal law of charity. So our new way of thinking is rooted in our new way of living the faith of God, which is established in this deep personal relationship with Christ. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, it's one of the most important parts of this. When was the law fulfilled? When Jesus died on the cross. And then he resurrected so that we have this new law, this new covenant. But when Jesus died on the cross, and what happened when Jesus died on the cross? The curtain in the temple was torn in two. And what does that mean? There is no longer this separation between God and his people. So that's where the relationship comes in. And this deep personal partnership, maybe is a better word to use, partnership with Christ, so that we may fulfill the new law, which is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. We were talking in a meeting that I am of priests that we gather. And, it was kind of funny because the discussion involved an article from Crisis Magazine. And I'm not a great fan of Crisis Magazine. If you want to know why, you can come and talk to me, and I'll be more than happy to explain it to you. And one of the things that I have a problem with is that we want to step away from just following rules, because we want to be rooted in prayer, and our prayer allows us to be part of a partnership. But one of the things that came out in the discussion is people are walking around thinking that they are good enough to get to heaven. And here is the problem, because that is a heresy we reject. We really don't believe in that, because in order to get to heaven, you have to do good things. That's that heresy that's there. And if you're doing good things, you'll get to heaven. But really, we are in a covenant, and a covenant is another way of saying a partnership with the Lord. So why do you have to go to church on Sunday? Well, it's not so much you have to, but you're in a partnership with the Lord. So going to church on Sunday is not an obligation as much as it's part of living the covenant. If you want to take it in its bare bones, you're saying, well, it's an obligation. Okay, fine. But it's part of you living making the covenant where you are in a partnership with the Lord, and part of that partnership is to go to church on Sunday. Well, Father, I'm good enough to get to heaven right now. I don't need to go to church on Sunday. Then you're separated yourself from the partnership. You see what I'm saying? It's we do business fine. We don't need to work with banks, right? Because banks are partners to just about every business. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. And now you're going to find out that your partnership falls apart because you're not working with banks in that example. But you see what I'm saying? So as they were talking the other day, and it's that whole idea where people think I'm good enough to get to heaven. It's not about being good enough. It's about being in a partnership with the Lord. So therefore, what we're called to do is be people of prayer who are in partnership with the Lord and who grow in our relationship with God. That's what we're called to do, so that we can go back to yesterday. We can be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. That's what we're called to do. It's not a case of earning our way to heaven. But the law applies, and the terms of the law of physics applies. So does the basic understandings. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. What happens if you don't do that? You get lost. You get lost. You get lost in your own little world, where in fact the Lord is calling us to be part of his community, his way of love, his way of everything. And that's what we're called to do. And we do that as witnesses to the gospel, as the witnesses of the way we're called to live, and in this partnership with the Lord. So you see, he's establishing all of that here. And of course, what happens is the original law is the foundation, and we build upon that through Christ building through his death and resurrection. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. Remember, when you're looking for a place to attend Mass, and if you don't already attend Mass at your local parish, come to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. We're located at 43 Holton Street in Allston, just a few blocks up from Soldiers Field Road. And you can check us out, come to our 10 o'clock a.m. Mass, and come to experience our Catholic worship at St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts.